Hi.
Hello.
What's up?
Not a lot. I'm supposed to talk to Mike about. I guess he thinks threshold deontology is special pleading or something.
Oh, Catholic Mike or Mike Patriot?
Mike Patriot.
I see. Wait, what's your name?
Michael.
Hi, Michael. Wait, I'm gonna ask if you are gonna tag him.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Hello.
what's going on, man?
Hey, I'm real close to my bedtime, so I only have a few minutes, but I wanted to talk to you quick about your threshold deontology take.
Yeah.
Not a threshold deontologist, but I think the idea that it's special pleading um, is a pretty bold claim, and I'm curious. I just take special pleading to be positing some exception to universal rule without justification. So I'm not sure how you think threshold deontology is special pleading. Maybe you could explain that.
Oh, yeah. So I would say that special pleading isn't always just in a case that is without justification. I would say that the reason why I say it's special pleading is because deontology is the belief that you will judge an action as to whether it is moral or immoral based on the action itself. Whereas if you're claiming that certain actions are able to be permissible based on some kind of a justifiable reason, therefore you would not be working on deontology. You would be working on some kind of form of consequentialism or something of that nature, which would then, by definition, be special pleading because you would be holding two different principles in two different situations.
So holding two different, so okay, so just to start with one thing, so holding two principles in two different situations doesn't constitute special pleading. I could say that I hold a principle where when I'm hungry, I want to eat food, and when I'm not hungry, I don't want to eat food. And that's holding two principles in two different situations, and that's not at all special pleading. You have to have more than that for special.
Yeah, no, yeah. So it's so I find that to be very disingenuous of a response, considering that we're clearly talking in a situation with morals or ethics, where there's a threshold in which, within this deontological theory, that something can be before it crosses this threshold, that it can still be considered to be moral rather than judging the action based upon itself, which I would say is directly refuting what it means to be deontological. Now, yes, granted, you can hold a principle where it's like, yeah, I'm going to eat food if I'm hungry or I'm not, right? But that doesn't constitute special pleading. But when you're talking about morals or ethics, which, like, morals, I would hope that you would be a moral realist. So you would be able to understand that morals are indeed objective. Therefore, there wouldn't be a threshold in which that would,
So
allow for there to be,
yeah,
special
so
circumstances, right?
first of all, the question of moral realism and the question of threshold deontology are separate questions. You can be an anti-realist and a threshold deontologist. You can be a realist and a threshold deontologist. I don't really know why you're bringing up moral realism. It doesn't have to do with whether or not threshold deontology is special pleading.
So yeah, so like the belief of deontology is to believe that the action itself is moral or immoral. So I would say that like that would already be rooted in a form of like moral realism by judging the action as to whether it's moral or immoral, which you're already working on a basis that there would be an objective moral because they would be talking about an action that could be immoral. By inferring that an action could be immoral, you're already working on a presupposition that something is objectively moral.
No, you're
And this
absolutely not.
this would be the antithesis of it, right?
You can be just a regular deontologist and hold that the deontic rules exist mind dependently or mind independently. The ontological status of the deontic rules is not something that is your normative view. That's going to be your metaethical view. That's completely separate from. You can be a deontologist and a realist, or a deontologist and an anti-realist. I don't understand where you're getting this, that there's presupposing realism in deontology. But again, this is just getting away from the threshold deontologist. I would like to stick on whether or not threshold deontology is special pleading. So,
Yeah, I've already given you my reasoning as to why I state that.
well, I'm curious, what is the universal rule that is being given an exception without justification?
So, like, give me an example of like threshold deontology in play with like morals or ethics, and I can give you like my response in which how I would say that that would be going against a universal truth.
Sure. Well, so we can look at the trolley problem, right? So the deontologist, a regular deontologist, might say you should let the train run over the 5 people, because to pull the lever would be commit a rights violation on the one person tied up on the tracks. Now,
Right.
the threshold deontologist might agree in that case with the deontologist and say, yeah, that is the rights violation. But if instead of having 5 people that the train is going towards, there's 10,000 people that the train is going towards, and you can redirect it onto one, that's where
This is utilitarianism.
some.
This is literally utilitarianism. This is literally consequentialism. You've abandoned deontology at this point.
Why are you? Wait, hold on.
Abandoned
I wasn't done
deontology.
talking. I don't know why you're jumping in. Let me just finish what I have, and then you have as much time as you
Okay.
want to respond. So, the so the for one, that it's utilitarian would not agree in the normal trolley problem case that you should not redirect the train track. A utilitarian would not agree to that. So that's already a difference between utilitarianism and deontology. I'm just drawing out the difference between threshold deontology and regular deontology. So that there's just, because you asked for an example, so that there's just some threshold of people on the track to where the threshold deontologist is going to say, now what you ought do is you pull the lever. Now you can respond.
Right. Yeah. Again, it's literally just what I said it was, which is a form of consequentialism or utilitarianism, because you're claiming that if there's a threshold, there's a number in which where this action becomes permitted and is no longer considered to be like an immoral action, or even recognizing that it's an immoral action, that it can still be taken. I would say that that is like just a consequentialist view.
So it's a moral pluralist view.
You're just no, okay, a moral pluralist view, that's fine. I would just say that again, by mixing in Machiavellian principles of the ends justify the means, you have abandoned deontology.
So it's not a pure deontic view, and it's not a pure utilitarian view. It's a pluralist view. It takes elements of deontology and elements of utilitarianism.
Right, yeah,
When you
it's
say,
special pleading.
wait 1 second. When
Yeah,
you say
it's combining two principles to make you feel like you're the most comfortable in the situation. It's literally special pleading.
that's so, again, what's the universal principle which is being accepted? If you're saying it's special pleading, you still haven't provided the universal principle which is being
The
accepted.
universal principle is the deontological view of it, which is that by taking an action in which, by doing an action in which that results in the death of other individuals that you've knowingly taken and know will have this outcome, is directly an immoral action. That is a universal truth. It does not matter the justifiers or the amount of people at which that you place in the situation or the variables that you add to it. It doesn't change the fact that this is objectively immoral.
Oh, so right now you're not critiquing threshold deontology anymore. You're assuming regular deontology and then saying that threshold deontology is special pleading because it's not this. That's not a critique on threshold deontology. Do you understand what I'm saying?
No, I don't understand what you're saying, considering that I have critiqued exactly what threshold deontology is, considering you've explained it to me,
So you
and
beg
I've
the
critiqued it, and I've literally explained to you how I've
Okay.
critiqued it with the combination when you combine
Okay.
two principled ideals, such as consequentialism and a form of deontology. You've abandoned deontology the second that you institute any form of consequentialism into your reasoning.
Okay, so once again, this is not a pure deontic view. It's not a pure utilitarian view. It's a value pluralist view. No one's ever claiming it's a pure deontic view or a pure consequentialist view. But when I ask you what's the universal principle that's being accepted, which makes it special pleading, and your answer is that it's the universal principle that you ought not commit those rights violations, you're just begging the question against threshold deontology. They don't hold to that universal principle. So they can't be special pleading if they're not holding to the universal principle.
So wait, say that again.
Yeah, so the threshold deontologist does not hold to that universal principle that rights violation is always, all things considered, wrong. That's not what the threshold deontologist holds to. So when you say that's the universal principle which which is being accepted, they're not they don't hold to that universal principle. So they can't be giving the exception to a universal principle if they don't hold that universal principle.
Okay, so so if you're claiming that because they don't align with this, so okay, so I do see what you're saying with like, so it does seem that like I am more comparing threshold deontology to just deontology, and why I disagree with it. I would just say that I don't think that there's a reasoning as to why you would be able to say that this would be called threshold deontology when like I feel that deontology already kind of presupposes kind of an absolute aspect to it, right? When it says that it's judging the action based on the action. I feel like that's an absolute, right? Am I mistaken with this? Like I'm just, this is where I'm confused, because this is why I feel like it would just be special pleading, because deontology presupposes that an action, whether based on the action itself, is moral or immoral, right? We agree with that.
The regular deontology, sorry, can you just repeat that last sentence you said? I had it all
Yeah.
up to there.
No, yeah. So regular deontology would say that we are judging an action as to whether it is immoral or moral based on the action itself.
Oh, yes.
Okay. So then where I become confused is where you start to add justifiers in it to where you can say that this action may be immoral but still permissible. I find that to be confusing when it comes to a deontological view. And this is why I find it very, like, I guess, like, the reason why I would say, like, it's special pleading is because I just feel like that abandons the principle of what it means to be deontological. I feel like you've.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not a pure deontic view. So it's not, if it was a pure deontic view, then it would say that an action is always going to be, all things considered, what you ought to do just based off of the action itself.
Mm-hmm.
At a certain threshold, it incorporates in the negative utility generated by the action. It considers both things in evaluating what you ought do in that situation. So it's not just a pure deontic view. But
So what would be the
I'm happy to,
what would be the
if you want.
threshold though? This is where I become confused, right? Because a threshold seems like an arbitrary term, right? It seems like it would be more of a subjectivist kind of view where it's dependent upon the individual to deem where this threshold lies.
Well, I can answer that question, but I just want to make clear that this is not a. I just want to make it clear that you realize that the existence of the threshold is just the view. The view is not that there's a universal rule which there's an exception to. That's not the view. We can talk about like the justifying the threshold. That's fine. But I just want to be clear. Do you accept that it's not special pleading?
Um, I mean, like, so, like, from the examples that I've seen it be used in, I would still say that it's definitely still just like the way that I perceive it and the way that I would see it is that I do see it as being special pleading. Like when people say that like threshold deontology is used in like this like, what is it, ethical veganism, right? Isn't that when people say like ethical veganism, where it's like you're not actually vegan, but you believe that it's ethical in which to be vegan? Like I find that to just be like special pleading, to be like, I hold this principle, but I'm not going to stand by it
Yep.
because I know that I won't be able to hold this principle, right? So like I find the use of threshold deontology to be used pretty commonly in instances of special pleading.
Yeah.
So that's why I guess I correlate the two.
I'm not asking about whether or not like there's individuals that engage in special pleading who are threshold deontologists. I accept that. I'm just asking about the view, whether you acknowledge that the view on its own isn't special pleading.
Um, I mean, I guess we have to establish what this threshold is before I would be able to state that it's not.
Um,
Because if it seems like because if it comes to be that the threshold is like a sliding scale, right? It's dependent upon the individual. Then I would claim that that very much could be an example of like special pleading, where like you're just going to hold a principle and then abandon a principle when it benefits you, just to be able to say that you will, right?
but the principle just is that you ought do X until this threshold, then you ought do Y. That just is the principle. So you
Right, but why? But why this threshold?
Well, you can ask why, but then that's getting away from the question if it's special pleading. Like if the principle just is that you do X up until this threshold, then you do Y. No matter how you get to the threshold, I don't see how this can be special pleading. If you still want to maintain that it's special pleading, I would just need the universal principle that's being posited and the exception they're positing to this universal rule. Now, I'm willing to answer your questions. I just want to settle this issue first.
Yeah, I mean, I would, again, like, I can't sit here and say that I don't view something as how it is if I can't, like, have it explained to me. So, like, I would have to have you explain to me why the threshold matters, and as to, like, what the determining factors for what the threshold is, before I'd be able to make an assertion as to whether or not this is
I,
special pleading or not. Like,
but I don't know if you're getting what I'm saying. I'm saying no matter how you determine the threshold, no matter where you put it, that if the principle just is that that there's one act you ought do up to this threshold and another act that you ought do after this threshold, then somebody can be consistent with that as a principle. That's not
yes,
holding the
but
universal
this is why.
principle.
But this is why the why matters, because clearly the principle of threshold deontology is the threshold. So we have to understand what the principle is before we can understand whether this is a like a logical belief system, right, or not. Like this is how, like, we have to understand it. We have to see the anatomy of this argument before we are able to come to a conclusion about it. Would you agree?
Whether you could come to a conclusion as to whether it's intuitive or correct or justified, yes. To whether or not it's special pleading, no. It's very clearly not special pleading. That's like if
But
I
you just keep
said,
telling me. I mean, you just keep telling me that it's
because
not. But then when I ask you for evidence to prove otherwise and to define it or explain to me further about it and the principle about it, which is the threshold, you dodge.
okay,
So
well,
I'm confused, right?
so you
This is
made
where the disconnect's coming in.
this is the thing. So you made a claim, threshold deontology is special pleading, and I just wanted to know if you're making the claim that threshold deontology is special pleading, what's the universal rule and what's the exception being posited to it? Now, if you don't have that, you can just say that you want to back off of the claim that it's special pleading, and I would be happy to answer all of your questions. But it seems like you just don't want to do that.
Bro, am I tripping, bro? Like,
You
is he right? Like, is he right? Am I tripping? Like, have I not been able to, like, prove whether or not this is special pleading or not, or like the questions that I'm asking are not like viable enough to be able to come to this conclusion?
Yeah, Amdir, I'm not really understanding like how you're saying he's trying to get away from the special pleading aspect if he's questioning the threshold itself, which is the principle of threshold deontology.
So no, the what I'm saying is that if he's making the claim that this metaethical view is special pleading, but he can't actually point to the principle that's being accepted to cause the special pleading, he can't point to the special pleading that's happening, then
The
I really
principle
want you
is
to
the
make the
threshold.
claim that
What
it
do you
is
mean?
special pleading.
The principle that I am referring to is the threshold, which is why I've asked you to explain why the threshold matters. If you can give me a justifiable reason as to why the threshold matters and like where it is to be seen at, then I would say, yeah, this is not a case of special pleading. But if this threshold is arbitrary and a sliding scale, then I would definitely say that this is that this is an example of special pleading.
What I'm just so confused about what justification has to do with it. So I could
Yeah.
say that I could say that the threshold is completely arbitrary, made up, unjustified, and it still wouldn't be special pleading. Where you like, I'm just confused how this is going to help you.
Wait. So you're saying that you can state that the principle of the argument is unjustified, yet the argument still remains to be true. I'm confused.
No, I'm not
I
saying the
don't understand.
argument. I'm not saying. I'm not
If
saying.
you can't justify the principle of the
Oh
argument,
my.
how does the argument still remain?
I'm not saying that I can keep it unjustified and that it would be true or that you should rationally accept it. What I'm saying is that I could just posit some random threshold at like you should not kill somebody to save 5 people, but once you get to 300, at exactly 300, that's where the threshold is, and then you should kill one person to save 300. That in order for it to be special pleading, I would have to hold to this principle, and then I would have to also say something like, well, even if there was 302 people who you were killing one to save, it would still be wrong to save it, because now I'm holding the principle, but I'm also giving an exception to the principle that I hold. Me having
Okay, but I'm asking you.
well, hold on. What I'm saying is whether or not that principle is justified doesn't have to do with whether or not I'm special pleading with it. That's a completely different discussion. It's a completely different subject.
Yeah, I don't see how you can claim, one, I don't understand how this isn't literally just textbook consequentialism by claiming that there's a threshold where the number is reached to where this has become a justifiable act. I don't know how this isn't exactly consequentialism. You'll have to try to
Can
explain
I give
that
it a
to me.
shot, Amdir?
Well, hold on. What do you think consequentialism is?
Consequentialism is judging an action as to whether it's like moral or permissible based on like the like circumstances surrounding the action, right? So like whether how much net benefit that, like, so like with utilitarianism, which is a form of consequentialism, it would be like the amount of utility that is given to a society, right? The amount of benefit to be had from this action in the long run. So it's like effectively like what consequentialism is just this Machiavellian principle of like the ends justify the means in
Yes.
the most like layman term.
Will a pure consequentialist say that under a certain threshold they don't care about the utility, they just care about the rights violations? Would a pure consequentialist say that?
Well, wait, would a pure consequentialist say that they don't care about what?
Would a pure consequentialist say, like in the example I gave with the threshold at 300 men, would a pure consequentialist say that you should not kill one person to save 200? Would a pure consequentialist say that?
Well, no. So again,
So
right,
then it's
this is
not the same
where it
as
comes
textbook
into,
consequentialism.
right.
It's
So
something different.
okay, right. So again, this is where I come into the point of why I'm saying that I feel like it's special pleading, because you're adopting both aspects of two principles, being deontology and consequentialism, and combining both of them to be able to make it so that you can find some comfortable place for your argument where you feel like you can still say that these actions are justified even though they are innately immoral
So the
or unethical.
very first thing we talked about is why holding two principles um, is not special pleading so long as you hold those two principles consistently. Um, and if you have if you we can say we'll say that it's two principles. We'll say that one principle is that before threshold X, rights violations determine what you ought to do, and then after principle, and then the second principle is that after threshold X, consequences determine what it is you ought to do. Now, as long as you hold these two principles consistently, there's no special pleading. You would have to show some universal principle, which is also has an exception to it. That's what is the task set out for you to do to justify your claim that threshold deontology is special pleading, and you still haven't done that.
Yeah, dude, I don't know, dude. I've said it multiple. I just feel like we're talking past each other at this point, bro.
I guess Impulse, if you want to take a crack at it, I can mute. I tried everything I can.
I mean, wait, I didn't hear, but did you agree that a threshold deontologist can agree with a principle that reduces utility?
Yeah, I would say that they can.
Okay, so a consequentialist like utilitarian, they wouldn't agree with that, correct?
Right.
Right. So there is a distinction between threshold deontology and utilitarians, right? Do you agree with that?
Right. Yeah. What I'm saying is that
Okay, cool.
it's combining both principles. It's combining that's the whole point of why I say that it's a form of special pleading, is because you're combining these principles of utilitarianism with directly antithetical principles of deontology, and then you're claiming that there's this arbitrary threshold in which that justifies this action.
Yeah, so the threshold deontologist usually cares about like pro tanto reasons, like to the extent that like some threshold is met. But like I don't see what it would be special pleading, because there is a rule that has been set, right? They care about rights violations or like rules or whatever, to the extent that whether the threshold be arbitrary or not, I don't think that really matters. But let's just say like the example that Amdir gave about 300 people. Uh, when that threshold is met, that's when they start caring about utility. I don't see why it would be a type of I don't see why it is special pleading when the principle is just set forth that to the extent that um, that our utility isn't sufficiently met, we care about rights violation. I don't see where the special pleading comes in, right? That's the principle. I don't see where the special pleading comes in. And plus, just to add, there are different flavors of deontology, right? There's like types of like Russian deontology and like Kantian deontology. So I don't see why it would matter this being a type of deontology.
Yeah, I don't know if like I don't know if it's just I'm not tracking or again like I'm just like we're talking past each other. I still don't see how I just don't understand it, bro. I don't get how you can adopt
Actually,
to
I think I have a way to illustrate it that might help a little bit. So, like, let's imagine that we're just talking about regular deontology for a minute. So, what I'm saying is that for you to be special pleading under regular deontology, you'd have to hold some principle like you always shouldn't, like, you should never murder. There's never a circumstance in which you should murder. And then I turn around and I say, well, Fred over here made me mad, so it's actually impermissible for me to murder him, because now I've posited a universal rule and an exception to this universal rule. I'm special pleading. But me asking you, like, well, why did you pick this deontic rule, like, you shouldn't murder, instead of a different deontic rule, like you should murder? No matter which of those two rules you pick, you could special plead or you could not special plead under either of them. And whether or not those rules are justified isn't going to be relevant to whether you're special pleading or not. That's what we're trying to get at.
okay. So I guess like I don't know. I guess since I don't know. I guess since I haven't been able to substantiate my claim that it's special pleading, I guess I'll say that it's not. But I still don't believe that it's any kind of a belief system that would hold water or weight.
Okay, we can talk about that then. I'm happy to move on then. So what was the question that you wanted to ask about it then?
Yeah. Again, like, why does the threshold matter, and what are we using to determine this threshold?
So why does the threshold matter? I mean, that's just the view. Like, I could ask a utilitarian, why does utility matter, or a deontologist, why do rights matter? It's going to depend on their metaethics. It's going to depend on their justification. I can tell you, for me, we're probably going to have a lot of ground to get through. So, I'm a moral anti-realist. You're a realist. So,
You're a moral anti-realist.
right. I can't understand rights. I don't understand the concept of a mind-independent reason for an action. It seems to be gobbledygook. It seems to be an incomprehensible term, right? I can't make sense. I can't make heads or tails of it. So I don't accept moral realism.
Bro, what?
So do you know the two types of well, actually, before we do this, let me just like answer your question. So yeah, the reason why the reason why we're going to hold the view is going to depend on your moral epistemology. So like an intuitionist might say they hold the view because it's intuitive. Someone could say it seems to be the case. They could use phenomenal conservatism. It's just going to depend on your theory of justification for why any normative view is the one you hold to. So like whether that's deontology, whether or not that's threshold deontology, whether or not that's utilitarianism. And then where the threshold is going to be set, that question is also going to depend on your that's also going to depend on whether or not on your metaethical view. So like if you're a realist, you might think that there are some objective mind independent facts about where this threshold is, and then how you intuit those is going to be again like a moral epistemology question, whether that's intuition, phenomenal conservatism. But I just want to stress that this isn't an issue unique to threshold deontology. The same question you're raising, I could raise against you as a regular deontologist. I could just say, well, why are the deontic rules that you hold to the correct ones? Right?
Why are the deontic? Well, wait. So wait a minute.
You don't have
You've
to
dodged
answer that
the question. Hold on. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
It wasn't really a question. It was a rhetorical
No, I
question.
know. But I know. But you've completely dodged the question, though.
Wait, what was the question that I dodged? I'm pretty sure I answered your question.
No, you didn't. I asked you, why does the threshold matter? You still haven't. All you did was claim that it's the principle of the argument and that people could challenge the same thing with utilitarianism or deontology, which is fair. People do. So I'm asking you the same question.
Well,
Why does the threshold
when you
matter?
say that it matters, do you mean like what is the justification for believing in it? Is that what you're asking? Because I don't
Yeah.
understand what you mean by matter.
What is the justification for why you believe that the threshold matters?
Well, so you say why I believe. I'm just defending the view. I'm not actually a threshold deontologist, but I did answer this. I answered that what justifies threshold deontology is going to depend on your theory of justification. Like, there's multiple good answers to this question. I could say it's justified because it is intuitively the case if I'm an intuitionist. I could say it is justified because it seems to be the case if I'm using phenomenal conservatism. It's just going to depend on what your theory of justification is, how you justify that. And then all the other thing I was saying was just a side note that the same type of problem could be levied against any normative theory, not just threshold deontology.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay. I guess like I don't know. It doesn't really seem like there's really a conversation to be had here. Then I guess.
Okay.
Seems like we're just generally talking past each other. So all right.
Well, I don't know about that, but that's fine. All right. Well, I gotta go to bed, so I'll talk to you fine people another time, maybe.
Yeah.